this day. Welcome to the show, and let me tell you about my first guest. He knows what it's like to struggle in life, physically, mentally, and financially. And when I tell you that he broke his back, what a serious thing to happen to anybody, which he rebuilt, and he learned from it, and he used those principles to apply to building other aspects of his life, including his wealth. From a low base, he's done so well in the world of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I'm delighted to say hello to Dinny Collins. Hello, Dinny.
Jerry, hello. Thanks for having me on.
Not at all. You're welcome, very welcome to the show. Just to concentrate on that point for a minute, breaking your back, Dinny. Serious matter.
Yeah. To my detriment, I'm a fan of motorcycles, still am, but you have to pay for fun on motorbikes, and a serious journey. But as I say, the best thing that ever happened to me, it changed my life in a positive way, changed my career, changed my outlook on life. So in hindsight, fantastic experience. At the time, not so fantastic.
And just a bit about your background. You do, and I've been reading a lot about you, you do talk about your growing up in your family, and your mum and dad worked oh so hard to make ends meet and rear ye, etc. It wasn't easy.
Yeah, I suppose we were a typical Irish family in that we always had money worries. Both my parents worked. My dad worked 6 days a week. He worked from 8 a.m. until 9 p.m. at night on Saturdays. And still there was always money worries. So my goal was always, I just want to earn money, not because I want money, just because I want to give it to them, and so they don't have to worry about this stuff anymore.
And you did indeed, and succeeded on that front, which is fantastic. What did you set out working at yourself?
I started off as a motor mechanic and a motorcycle mechanic. I served my time in that apprenticeship. After that, then we sort of went into I went into steel fabrication with my dad. He needed some help, so I actually done a second apprenticeship with my dad. I didn't like that career. I didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't for me. I didn't think I was particularly good at it. I was particularly good at it, I think, because I won an award from Bertie Ahern for being Apprentice of the Year or something. But it just wasn't something that I loved.
But that was where you were earning your crust. Now, between the accident, as you said, and the need for speed, and you recovered from that and made your way, what turned your head to the world of money and finance and that whole area?
It was always a want, I suppose, to earn money. I think from having the money troubles, I started reading books on how to become rich, and then I started reading books from investors, and I read a great book I always recommend is Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and it just sort of changed my thinking. Now it didn't change my actions. It wasn't until I actually had my back accident I was forced to change my career, because my career at the time was steelwork, and my surgeons told me, like, your career is over in steelwork. You can't lift more than a bag of sugar, and you'll be at best we'll get you walking with a limp. So that's when I was forced to sort of reassess. Okay, I'm only in my 20s. What am I going to do for the rest of my life? How am I going to make some money?
So necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and you had to reinvent yourself. Now, I want to get onto the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies in a moment, but let me ask you this. Mechanisms or vehicles for making money, the common ones are, invest in property, buy stocks and shares, gold and precious metals. Did you try any of those?
Yeah, I would invest into all other asset classes, including all of them, and obviously Bitcoin and digital assets. If I can just add one thing there, for me, the biggest return on my investment from going from living in a mobile home with a broken back and broken financially and broken mentally was to invest into myself. And I always try and communicate that to people, that you are the best asset that you have, and investing into your own education is going to give you much higher returns, or allow you to achieve much higher returns when you then invest into other asset classes.
Well said, and great advice indeed, because if you don't invest in yourself, well, you ain't going anywhere, that's for sure. So you've been down the property route, stocks and shares, gold, etc. Why cryptocurrency, and how long are you at this, or how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I suppose why cryptocurrency is, when I look at all the assets and everything that's available to me, cryptocurrency is the most volatile, which means the most powerful, which means it needs a lot of attention, but it also means you can achieve results faster than the other asset classes. Now, full disclosure, with that comes a lot more risk. So for me, it was something that I decided to dedicate a lot of my attention to, because I've just seen it as the emergence of a new asset class. Bitcoin has potential to be sound money. Like, that's big. That's as big as the internet's invention. And it was something that I became really passionate about. I'd been exposed to Bitcoin and crypto in 2016. I had friends who were involved and they were trading, and it sparked my attention. But I was building fitness companies at the time and I was busy with that. And I was just watching it from afar. But I did go down the route of becoming, before I was a Bitcoiner, I was actually a gold investor. And I think once you can understand gold and the value of gold, it's quite easy to transition then over into realizing that Bitcoin is just digital gold.
So explain it in layman's terms for listeners today. What is it? I find it very difficult to get my head around it because I don't have it in my pocket. You know what I'm talking about? I can't feel it. I can't buy it or sell it physically or in... You know what I'm getting at? And I'm sure a lot of people listening to us today are thinking the same. So in a brief synopsis, what is it actually?
Yeah, Jerry. When you say brief, I'm like, what have I got?
I know. But can you summarize?
An hour would be a brief.
I know.
The reason Bitcoin's difficult to understand is because it is so broad. Now, I'll chat about the physical versus digital, because that is a stumbling block. However, that's not a stumbling block for generations behind us. For generations behind us, the fact that you can hold it in your hand is an inconvenience, not an advantage. Like our generation, and like I'm in my 40s and people beyond, it's like, oh, I have to hold it in my hand for it to be real. But the generations behind us see be able to hold something in your hand as being an actual inconvenience. So for me, the baby step that I try and take people through is that explain gold to them and all the properties of gold and why gold has been sound money for thousands of years. And Bitcoin is just a digital innovation upon that. Okay, so it's a digital variation of a physical product, just like a CD. Okay, and we have Spotify, just like a filing cabinet, we have the cloud. Yeah. Just like I would have had to come into your studio to do this interview, and we can do it here on Zoom. You know, yes. We've digitized all these things, and that's all Bitcoin is a digital innovation on gold. And that's not all it is. It's many more things beyond that, but that's a baby step to understanding it.
And I know what you're saying, because if you invest in gold, you never actually have or hold or touch the gold. And funny enough, you know, I was thinking about you and talking to you on the show today. If you have savings in a bank or in a credit union or wherever, if you invest in shares, you actually don't rarely physically have it either. Isn't that a point to make?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, because Bitcoin is what's called a bearer asset, which means you can hold your Bitcoin in your hand. You can take self-custody of it, and it's very easy to store, unlike physical gold. Now, with all other assets, sort of monies and things like that, the ability to actually own your own money, we have it at the present, but by the end of this decade, it's likely that we've transitioned to digital euros. So you won't have an ability to ever hold your euros. They'll sit on your mobile phone, but you will have an ability to actually own and take custody of your own Bitcoin, which is kind of ironic, because that's the reason why most people who don't understand it think that they shouldn't own it, because they can't hold it in their hand. Yes. But for all intents and purposes, you can transfer your private keys onto a digital wallet and you can hold it in your hand.
Yeah, it's a mentality, it's a frame of mind, it's a way that's going to develop more for, you know, future generations as well. How do you buy into it? How do I you know, say for euros, for example? I know you can in dollar and other currencies, of course, but do I buy units of this, or how do I invest in it?
Yeah, Jerry, the beauty of Bitcoin is, and that's what attracted me, in my early days of trying to become an investor, I rang up financial advisors and they laughed me off the phone when I said I had 30 euros a month to invest. But with this was 15, 20 years ago. But with Bitcoin, you can get started with any amount. So you can buy a $5 worth, you can buy €1 Bitcoin a week. And just to give some warning out to anyone who might be listening to this, the problem with Bitcoin is there's a misunderstanding with it. So for anyone who wants to get involved, I'd say spend some time on some education, even spend some money on some education, because the problem with Bitcoin is it's very easy to dupe people. Okay, you want to buy the Bitcoin yourself, you just set up with an exchange app like a Coinbase or a Crypto.com or a legitimate broker, and then it's just like using Revolut. You'll sell you'll exchange you'll say I want to buy €5 worth of Bitcoin, and you'll get 0.00000 whatever. You'll get a couple of thousand satoshis each one Bitcoin. So you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin, because a whole Bitcoin is around $20,000 today.
I saw that.
But you can buy fractions of a Bitcoin. Every Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million units. So this Bitcoin is actually more divisible than euros.
I saw that today. I was just looking at the value before I popped into the studio here upstairs, and it's just over 20 today. It's a huge amount of money for a Bitcoin. But here's the thing with it as well. Can I buy products with it? Can I go shopping with it? You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people get hung up on that. And there's two answers to it. One is every year you can buy more and more stuff with your Bitcoin. But what I would say is I don't own Bitcoin because I want to go and buy coffee with it. That's what euros are for. And the same reason why I don't own gold and I own gold, I can't buy coffee with my gold coins.
Yes.
And it's the same with any stocks that you own. You can't go and spend them. You just own them as an investment vehicle, as an asset, as a way to store and protect wealth. And that's what Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is basically the transition from physical store of value to digital store of value. And Bitcoin is outperforming all the physical assets. You don't have any problem. If I buy an investment property, I've got, my tenants ringing me up to say the sink is leaking, or the neighbours, or they want to paint it. I don't have any of that with Bitcoin. I don't have to paint my Bitcoin. I just own it.
It's an awful pity I hadn't talked to you many moons ago. I can actually empathise with everything you're saying there, mother of God. Anyway, something else about it. You know the way they say you should spread your investments across the portfolio. I've mentioned it already: property, stocks and shares, cash, gold or whatever. What percentage of your investment should Bitcoin be?
That's an impossible question to answer because I can't give financial advice here. I do consulting one-on-one with people. But I'll just explain how I got my parents into Bitcoin, okay? And before I say that, I'll say we're often told you should be heavily diversified, but anyone who ever achieved anything great in life wasn't diversified. They were very concentrated. Yeah. So, perhaps sometimes you should question narratives and beliefs that are just pushed on us that, well, is that really an effective way? What if I'm just more concentrated and I understand something really, really deeply and I manage it really, really carefully? Well, being more concentrated for me, and that's how I've sort of got myself from mobile home, wasn't by being super diversified, it was by being very concentrated, okay? But then to leave that to one side and say, how much Bitcoin should you own? I came to my parents, okay, and they'd be typical. They've got some life savings, not a whole lot of money. With the way inflation is, it's going to buy them very little in the future, okay? And I was worried about that a few years ago, before we had the inflation levels we had now. And I says, they don't understand investing or any of that stuff, and we've seen 2008 and what happened then. So I said, can I have 5% of your life savings? And we're going to buy Bitcoin with it. And my reasoning on that is, okay, and this was aggressive. You wouldn't have had to be that aggressive. You could be at 1%. I was like, if I lose 5% of your life savings, it's not going to affect your retirement at all. You'd be saying to, your friends, Dinny got me into this thing, but it's not going to break them. And I was of the understanding that if this goes wrong, I'll just replace the 5%. But not regarding that, I was like, it's not going to harm their retirement. However, the beauty of this, Jerry, is Bitcoin over time is trending up in value over time. Euros are buying less over time. So euros are going down in value over time. Their Bitcoin element of their portfolio is now somewhere around 20% to 25%. So without me buying any more Bitcoin, just having a 5% exposure, and I'm not accounting for inflation. With inflation, we're probably up at 35% that you're actually weighting of Bitcoin. So by me buying a tiny bit of Bitcoin with their life savings and just keeping it safe for them, that's protecting their purchasing power. So as the euros continue to debase with what we're seeing now, inflation, the cost of living is going up. But when you price things in Bitcoin, the cost of living is coming down because Bitcoin is money that goes up in value over time. Now it goes up in value over time with volatility, and the volatility is we pay for the performance. Bitcoin has gone up actually 60 million %, and it's down 50%, 60% at the moment, and a lot of people are upset over that. But unfortunately, you've got to participate in the downside if you want to participate in the upside. And with Bitcoin, it's long-term thinking, okay? So this is what I teach people. It's about zooming out. Own Bitcoin for a decade. Own Bitcoin. Anyone who's ever owned Bitcoin for 4 years is always in a better financial position. And that's how Bitcoin works. I explain all this.
Now, here's something just to stop you there for a second. There is risk with it, and I've been looking at the trend, knowing you were joining me on the show over a number of years, and you're right, it was up high and then it would trended down, and it's trending back up again, and it's like stocks and shares. But I want to come back to something you said. You said concentrate on one, and of course the famous man, stocks and shares man in America, that's all he ever invested in, and he said that was his field, he didn't go anywhere else. But are you exposing yourself to risk when you're so narrow?
Yes, you see, it depends where you are. There's a financial ladder that we're all on. When I was living in my mobile home, I was at the very bottom of the ladder. Okay, I couldn't really get any lower. So in that position, I was afforded to be able to take more risk. However, if I'm at the opposite end of that scale, okay, and I've made a lot of wealth and I have a lot of wealth, well, now it's more important for me to be more diversified, or I'm closer to retirement age. I don't want to be taking on as risk. I want to be much more diversified and have much more risk. So that's why I say you can't give individual advice or say this is how you do it, because it's very much individual of where someone sits, their age and their circumstances.
Does it worry you that Bill Gates poo-poos cryptocurrencies?
Not at all.
Even with his knowledge and wealth and how successful he's been?
Yeah, the problem with Bitcoin is it takes a lot to understand it. And unless anyone has done the deep work on it, they won't understand it. It's hard to find anyone who's done 100 hours of deep work on Bitcoin who isn't insanely bullish on it. And they don't have to put all their wealth in it, okay? But they have an exposure. They have a 1%. Because if this thing is digital gold, I call it digital gold, but it's not certain. If it's digital gold, the Bitcoin is worth $1 million per Bitcoin. So it's clearly not digital gold yet, but it's on the journey to becoming it. So just as a little bit of an insurance, a prudent investor would own a little bit of Bitcoin. And they'd also be of the realization that, well, this is the highest performing asset over the last 13 years, bar 1 year. I should own this thing in my portfolio.
You've been involved, I know, in building multiple 6- and 7-figure sum companies. You are well known as an investor and a successful one as well. Are you comfortable? Could you stop today and say you have enough money to live the rest of your life, Dinny?
I tried to retire a couple of times. And people misunderstand this. I misunderstood this. The beauty of doing your own cash flow statement is find out how much money you need to retire. Like, what's the minimum that you think you could live on per week? And for most of it, it's much lower. I couldn't maintain an extravagant lifestyle without working, but I could maintain a happy lifestyle without working. However, I love working, I love the crack, I love meeting people, like my job. I'm fortunate. I talk about Bitcoin. You can probably tell I'm passionate about this. I talk about it at parties when I'm not being paid to talk about it.
That's where I want to meet you, and you'd make the night for sure. But look, you are professional, you do advise people, and you're out there, and it is another option to look at, as you say, in a world where currency values are certainly falling, and that is quite obvious. Where can people find out more about you and what you do, please?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Lastly, just nobody questions money in the good times, but we're at a time now when it's time to question money, because when you see that toilet paper seems to maintain its value better than the euro in your wallet, in that toilet paper will probably be more expensive in 4 years' time, so it has maintained its purchasing power better than your euros.
Yes.
It really is worth going down the rabbit hole to understand money, to understand gold, and to understand Bitcoin. Where people can find me, cryptowithdinny.com. You can find me on Twitter at Dinny Collins, and or just Google Crypto with Dinny and we'll come up. We do free workshops teaching people about Bitcoin, and full disclosure, we've consulting products as well.
Thanks for joining me. You're a great story. Recovered from a huge setback in your life. Went down a road where you've been so successful. I wish you continued success. And I've enjoyed talking to you today because you've settled some things in my mind for sure. And I hope so for listeners too. Good luck to you. Thanks for taking the call.
Thanks very much, Jerry.
Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. He's a most successful guy. He really is, and had many setbacks in his life. Crypto@dinny.com. You can find out more information on it.